everyone. Welcome to Raising Vibrations. This is Simon. And today I'm going to be sharing with you in this video some of my thoughts on the Mercury retrograde that's happening for us as of tomorrow, the 6th of January. And basically just sharing some of my reflections upon what I think we can do to integrate ourselves into this energy pattern and to come out the other side of it with the maximum amount of potential that it can provide for us, like the evolution. Okay, so the first thing, just to get some of the left brain stuff out the way, Mercury is in Aquarius at this stage. It's at 1 degree and it's now stationary at this point in time. So you probably will feel a slight frustration at this stage regarding some of your mental thought processes. You probably wanting to even feel as if there's this need to accomplish some stuff, and also needing to accomplish some stuff that has been of the past. And so you're kind of revisiting that in that sense, or you're at least getting the feeling of that being the case. And there might be some frustration around it in some way, shape, or form, not necessarily negative, not that there is anything bad with negative, but there is something that might not be working for you as fluidly as you would like. Okay, so it will then retrograde, I believe, up until the 25th of January 2016. And of course, we're dealing with the period of time where it's actually retrograde. And of course, it will be through the shadow period as well. So we may be looking at around about the end of January for us to actually be fully out of this pattern. Okay, so what does it actually mean in terms of what Mercury retrograde does for us? Okay, now I would highly recommend actually reading the article that I wrote called Understanding Mercury-Retrograde. That is in the description below. And it gives like a really in-depth analysis of what the function of it is and so on and so forth. So I'm going to cover some of those aspects today in this video. The things that you've got to really recognize with Mercury retrograde is that firstly, we're dealing with two sides of the brain. Okay, so what is the connection between the brain and Mercury retrograde? Well, the brain itself has two hemispheres, and what we're dealing with here is the right brain and the left brain. So the right brain is intuitive, and the left brain would be the logical aspect. So Mercury would fall under the logical aspect of the brain hemisphere, or the nature in which and how we create reality. So when it goes offline, when Mercury goes retrograde, what happens is that during the period of time that it was actually direct, so for 3 months or 2 months or so on and so forth, during that period of time, we had conversations, we were establishing new ways of doing things, we were creating new communication, etc., etc. Once we have come to a point where we've basically expressed a lot, when Mercury turns retrograde, it then allows us to go back in on situations and circumstances that we have had regarding those communications and expressions and revisit them. So where the right brain comes in is that it takes all that gathered data and it then puts it into the left brain or the right brain capacity. So it's almost as if, and I mention this quite often, it's almost as if you are studying for an exam, as it were, and you're collecting all data and you're reading all facts, etc. And then you go to sleep, and during the night, all the information digests itself into intuitive aspects, so that when you write the exam, as it were, the next day, then you're writing from memory as well as a slight aspect of intuition. So Mercury retrograde is when we're taking all that gathered information while it was direct, and then it's soaking in the intuitive aspect, allowing us to have intuitive insights that occur for us. So we go right brain orientated, which is why we always notice that during the Mercury retrograde, and especially when you read, articles from Understanding Astrology, it's like, do all the stuff beforehand, everything goes chaotic during Mercury retrograde. It's because it's a right brain function that's taking place. It's a Jupiterian, so it's very abstract. It's very non-linear, right? And so our potential when Mercury goes retrograde in terms of your spiritual realization is to actually be very flexible during this period of time, and to not gather new information or start new projects for the simple reason, not because it's a bad idea, but because you want to give yourself the capacity to allow deep inner reflection to give insights regarding what the last 2 months were. So that when you actually have Mercury go direct again and it moves through its shadow period, as you go then forward along the cycle of ascension, the consciousness that you bring with you is not only one that has revisited old conversations, that has brought you new perspectives, but it's also allowed you to actually then at the same time unknot or untangle conversations and situations that have occurred in the past when it was direct in, to be untangled, essentially. Okay, you've got a different perspective, you've got an intuitive insight. So it's insights really that I'm asking you to allow yourself to develop during this Mercury retrograde period by listening to your intuition, by allowing yourself to kind of relax a little bit, by allowing yourself to chill out a little bit. And of course, one of the major reasons as to why the idea of writing contracts or reading things doubly or having communications being sort of all chaotic again is because the function of that retrograde is offline. Of Mercury is offline. So of course there's going to be information that's going to be missing. Of course there's going to be things that you might read that might not necessarily, show up the right way. You would have skipped a word or misspelled something. I mean, I know I've done that. I remember sending out a metamorphosis advert, and I'd put an extra zero on how much it was worth, how much I valued it, and it was completely wrong. So the point here that I'm trying to make is that the aspects of understanding how to get Mercury retrograde is allowing yourself to just chill out during this period of time and reflect, revisit conversations, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, the context of it, of course, lands specifically in your birth chart. So wherever you've got Aquarius and Capricorn in your birth chart, this is what I would then suggest you analyze within your own chart. Okay, now if you don't know how to analyze that, that's why you can work with me and I'll be able to share with you how to do that process. Okay, so you can book a reading with myself doing that stuff or speak to an astrologer. But for those of you that do, it is about analyzing the nature of the house and the sign that it's in, and then the ruling planets as well. So in this case, we're dealing with Saturn. So this is what brings me to speaking specifically about what I think this Mercury retrograde is about. And that is that, and I'm doing a separate video that specifically talks about Mars and Mars's transit into Scorpio. So watch that video as well. It's in connection with this one. And that is that with Mercury going retrograde and Mars moving into Scorpio, the Saturn through Scorpio cycle that took place for us over the last 2.5 years, 300 years, has really come to fruition. It's culminated itself. And so this Mercury retrograde is about deconditioning and finally putting into place the parameters that you worked on in that period of time. Okay, so there's actually quite a lot of deep stuff that's going on here. And of course, you'll notice how this change will occur probably by the end of January. But whatever adjustments, thoughts, ideas, conclusions you've come to, you're going to revisit again. And then through some final energetic patterns that have occurred for you in December and of course November and October, those periods of times that will now come to the surface, that will come to head for you, and those choices and decisions will now be available for you right now and be like, okay, great, now I see it from a different perspective. Maybe that's the reason why that person didn't take my job offer, or that's the reason why I didn't get that house, because now I see that there was a better house, as an example. So there's going to be things that are going to come up for you regarding the most recent Saturn and Saturn and Scorpio stuff that is going to come to full circle, and you're going to have this enlightenment experience. So I reckon that this is going to be pretty intense. It's a very powerful Mercury retrograde, in my opinion. Now, for me, personally, what happened for me was that, so Saturn transited my 10th house. It was also my Saturn return. So what has occurred for me is that as I've understood my own soul's path, okay, so my own soul's path is about evolving through the archetype of self-determination. It is evolving through the archetype of becoming more centered within my own consciousness regarding choices I make, decisions I make, and then also learning how to become my own father, as it were. So as Mercury goes retrograde, it actually lands up in my 12th house at this point in time, and what's going to be happening here in connection to Mars moving over my 10th house stuff, where Saturn's recently been, there's this new definition that I'm birthing within myself. And it's actually kind of interesting because, as you can see behind me, the screen that I'm using, or should I say the appearance behind me, is just a blank wall. And I'm kind of reshaping my whole entire studio as well as office over here, so that it's more of an appealing place for me to work in, so that when I'm in this place, the energy that I'm operating on is high vibrational. Now, I'm not saying that it isn't the case, but I'm finally, over the last 2.5 years, settling down into what it is that I feel comfortable with. And so what took me 2.5 years to do today, that I did in 15 seconds or 20 seconds regarding making some choices, was actually pretty profound. Like, I actually was able to support myself regarding setting up the new workstation for raising vibrations. Whereas 2.5 years ago, I didn't even dream of it. All I knew was that some people needed to know that while they go through this intense transit, whatever it is that they're going through, that there are other people doing the same thing. So therefore, let's start raising vibrations. So here I'm sitting right now with what I consider to be a very established platform for me to promote the work that I do, and also to promote self-healing for myself. And of course, then for you guys to also feel like you're not crazy when you're going through intense experiences within your own self. So there's actually quite a massive revelation and sense of newness that has occurred. And this Mercury retrograde is giving me the capacity to just finally put the final puzzle pieces together and say, yes, I did deserve that. I did put in that hard work. I did make those choices. I did take responsibility for those things, etc., etc. So big stuff, big stuff in that sense. So I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say regarding what your Mercury retrograde is about. And like I said, there's an article in the description below, and you can click on that to understand more about Mercury retrograde. I hope that you got a lot out of this video, and to try and understand what is needed going forward regarding this transit. As I said again, just to remind you, it's a place of just staying with yourself, centered, watching your thoughts, allowing yourself to revisit conversations, and when things come back into your life that you maybe didn't do over the last 2.5 months, do them ASAP. Don't start new projects yet, because you're still trying to gather some information. There will be aspects missing. You probably will have to return to that once it goes direct again, okay? So chill out is what I'm really trying to say. And yeah, that's final. Other than that, guys, thanks very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this. Hit the like and subscribe button, because YouTube likes that. It gets people to know that this video exists, which is obviously highly appreciative of me. And have a fantastic day. Take care. Bye-bye.